The Day of the Jackal, released in 1973 and set in 1963, where a hired assassin plots to kill the French president, Charles de Gaulle, and a cat-and-mouse chase between the assassin, codenamed the Jackal, and the French and British police trying to capture him. In this video we will learn of the real-life events that inspired the movie, as well as successful assassination attempts in the second half of the 20th century, and sparking sequels with a loose remake in 1997 starring Bruce Willis as the Jackal, then another in 2024 starring Eddie Redmayne. But is the films based on a true story? Well, it's rather like the film Amadeus, largely historical fiction with elements of real history, events woven in, but making for a great film. Charles de Gaulle was the subject of multiple assassination attempts during his life, though the plot of the Jackal is entirely fictional, but how much of the storyline is fiction and how much is historical fact? The story is a two-sided chase between the sophisticated, ruthless British assassin, going by his codename Jackal, hired by a disgruntled far-right paramilitary group known as OAS, or Secret Army Organisation in English, wishing to assassinate Charles de Gaulle for his decision to grant Algeria independence. At the time, Algeria was not just a French colony, but legally it was considered an integral part of France for the large population of European settlers. With Edward Fox playing the part of the Jackal, and the film following him as he creates new identities, acquires a custom-made rifle, and covertly travels across Europe, while the Deputy Commissioner, Claude Lebel, an unassuming detective, is tasked with a seemingly impossible mission to identify and capture an assassin whose name, nationality, and appearance are completely unknown, while using old-school police detective work. The real and most famous assassination attempt that Charles de Gaulle survived was the Petit-Clamart ambush in August 1962, led by Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Marie Bastion III, and is directly depicted in the opening scene of The Day of the Jackal, with a group of OAS commandos ambushing President de Gaulle's Citroën DS. The group composed of 12 members, armed with automatic weapons and explosives, multiple vehicles, and firing 187 rounds, with only 14 hits observed on the president's vehicle, with all 4 tyres pierced, but failing to even injure de Gaulle. In the aftermath, the leader, Bastion, and most of his co-conspirators were captured. Bastion was sentenced to death on March 11, 1963, and was executed by firing squad. He was the last person to be executed by firing squad in France. His execution and the fact that de Gaulle had refused to pardon him became a major historical event in and of itself. Another notable assassination attempt happened a year prior, in September of 1961, the Pont-sur-Seine attack, with once again OAS members planted a powerful bomb on the country road near the town of Pont-sur-Seine, intending to detonate it as de Gaulle's motorcade passed through, but the triggering of the device was much too late and missing the president's car by a few car lengths. But the main plot of the film is the Jackal using the precision rifle, first commissioning it through a machinist, then testing it out in the forest. But is this based on a true event? While strangely enough, one of the most dramatic and factual accounts of de Gaulle being under fire was not from the OAS, but during the liberation of Paris in 1944, as de Gaulle walked to a Thanksgiving Mass at Notre Dame Cathedral. A sniper opened fire, reportedly from the roof of the cathedral. While de Gaulle was not injured, the incident was captured on film and is a verified historical event. Why was there such a large movement to assassinate Charles de Gaulle? The primary reason was his perceived betrayal following the pivotal change in policy regarding Algeria. Charles X and his ministers began the conquest of Algeria in 1830, in the following years spreading into the interior. Then in 1834, Algeria became a French military colony and declared in the Constitution of 1848 to be an integral part of France. And by 1954, the FLN guerrillas attacked military and civilian targets throughout Algeria and what became known as the Red All Saints' Day, taking to the radio calling for all Muslims in Algeria to join in the national struggle for the restoration of the Algerian state, lasting from 1954 to 1962, with Algeria winning its independence from France. The conflict also became a civil war between communities and a guerrilla-style warfare with war crimes on both sides, creating serious political crisis in France and causing the fall of the Fourth Republic in 1958. De Gaulle then won a comfortable majority in the election of November 1958 and was inaugurated in January 1959. The assassination attempts would begin in 1961, following a pivotal change in his policy regarding Algeria. Coming to the realization that keeping Algeria was unattainable, and the war was draining France's resources and harming its international reputation. In 1959, publicly announcing that Algeria had the right to self-determination, and signed the Evian Accords, which officially granted Algeria its independence. After being brought back into power in 1958, many expected de Gaulle to keep Algeria at all costs, and hoping for a better military successes. The film amplifies the complex and fractured nature of the OAS into a more streamlined singular group. In reality, the organisation was in different factions with agendas and rivalries. The film received significant backlash at the time for revealing how to create a false passport, where the Jackal obtains the birth certificate for a deceased child. The Jackal obtained a fake passport under the name Alexander Duggan because the Jackal had acquired the birth certificate of the real Alexander Duggan, a boy who had died in 1931. By doing this, he could apply for a genuine British passport with his own photograph but under the deceased boy's name. In the film, one of the Scotland Yard detectives mentions that the Jackal may have been behind an assassination in the Congo, but is this based on any real-life events that happened in the 20th century? While one of the most famous assassinations of the 20th century was the killing of Leon Trotsky, who was a Russian revolutionary, Soviet politician, and political theorist, a key figure in the 1905 revolution and the October Revolution of 1917, after the death of Lenin in 1924, Trotsky became the strongest critic of Stalin, who soon outplayed him and later expelled him from the party in 1927 and later deported him in 1929, living in France, Norway, Turkey and finally Mexico, writing prolifically in exile on the history of the Russian Revolution, the Revolution Betrayed, and a critique of the Soviet Union under Stalinism. While in exile, Trotsky lived under heavy surveillance from the Soviet Secret Service and native countries he sought refuge in. During his final years in Mexico, Trotsky had a highly organized security detail at his fortified compound in Coyoacan, Mexico, with a dedicated and highly organized security detail not provided by the Mexican government but managed by his American followers, many of whom were volunteers from socialist workers' parties. His security detail was led by an American Marxist called James Cannon. The fortress was a high-walled villa with arms, watchtowers, and an armed guard patrolling in the perimeter, rotating in teams of armed American and Mexican bodyguards who lived inside the compound, all visitors being strictly vetted before being allowed inside, and no one would see Trotsky without an appointment. But despite these measures, the assassination was successful because of his security was outmaneuvered from the inside. The assassin, Ramon Maceda, was a Spanish communist, an NKVD secret agent. He posed as a lover of a key member of Trotsky's circle, a young American woman named Sylvia Egloff. Over a period of 2 years, Maceda earned the trust of Trotsky's inner circle, eventually being allowed inside the compound. On the 20th of August, 1940, Trotsky was attacked in his study by Maceda with an ice axe supported by the NKVD, the operation code named Udka, or Duck, striking him in the head with an ice axe, using the adze part and fracturing his parietal bone, penetrating 7 centimeters into the skull. Trotsky's bodyguards burst in, nearly beating Maceda to death. Trotsky stopped them, then dying the following day, aged 60, and with Maceda convicted and served 19 years and 8 months in prison. While the Jackal's mission is entirely fictional, but the plot of a political rivals who would hire a cold professional assassin to execute a meticulously plan is absolutely real and has many parallels with the murder of Leon Trotsky, such as how the real OAS had many failed attempts on de Gaulle and how Soviet forces had many failures before their final success. Maceda was a hired assassin and political fanatic, completely loyal to the Soviet Union under Stalin, while the Jackal isn't politically motivated, acting entirely for financial gain. The Day of the Jackal is a great film based on some real-life scenarios with historical fiction woven in. Released in 1973, shortly after the famous assassinations of John F. Kennedy 10 years earlier in 1963, Malcolm X in 1965, and Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King both in 1968.